Hello and welcome everyone to episode 163 of the Living Healthy Today podcast. My name is Carol Lee Cohen. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, sports nutritionist, health and wellness consultant, weight management consultant, master nutritionist. And as you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, I've had way too much experience being the patient and consumer myself, especially with kidney issues. I've had the opportunity to manufacture supplements, to advise in manufacturing, and also as a healthcare professional. And as always, as we get started, remember the following information in this podcast is for educational purposes only, not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The statements presented here have not been evaluated by the FDA. The information is not a substitute for medical advice, nor are any product substitutes for prescribed medication. You should always consult your doctor or other medical professional for help with diseases, but you should also do your own research and consult your own common sense. And we are in the middle of our 10-part detox and cleansing series. This is video number 7 in our 10-part detox and cleansing series, and it is video number 3 where we're reviewing how to take care of our kidneys. So if you have not already listened to video 5 and 6, which talk about the basic and advanced strategies for kidney health, please stop listening to this episode and go back and review those, as this one isn't going to make a lot of sense for you unless you do, and will build on a lot of things that we already learned in videos 5 and 6 for this video. We've talked a lot about how the order of detox matters. And if we look here at where the kidneys are located, if you look at the image on the left, it's those two bean-like structures that sit on top of that transverse colon, the part of the colon that goes horizontally across your abdomen area. They sit right above that. And this is why we talked about cleansing out the large intestine, the small intestine, the stomach, getting all of that clean and flushing well before we kind of went to the kidneys, because the kidneys are a little higher in the body and you'll have better results. You'll have less herxing and you'll feel a lot better. So in today's focus, we're going to talk about some of the things that people unknowingly eat on a regular basis and some of the medications that cause serious kidney damage. And this slide again is just a refresher of the basic nutrition that we start out with that's going to help support the kidneys to detox and heal. And if we don't have this nutrition on board, even if we're avoiding the foods and medications that damage the kidney, they're still going to be working poorly because they depend on these different vitamins and herbs, different nutrients to actually work correctly. That's what makes the kidneys work. So this is a combination of we have to get the nutrition in there and we also have to stop damaging them. So if you're not familiar with this, again, go back to our previous episodes. And these are some of the signs, again, that we're looking for having kidney issues. And there are certain foods and medications that actually will trigger these symptoms, even if prior to eating those foods and medications, you have been doing great with your kidneys. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. Now, I also want to just remind you that these are the things you want to look for as to when you can decrease some of the supplements that you're using. So if you start to see that increase in bright yellow urine, you have greater energy, your blood pressure starts to get better, you have a loss of fluid retention. But at the same time, if you go down on your dosing and you see the symptoms return, if you see an increase in any of your symptoms, or if you are facing a situation where you've got an infection or you're trying to detox, you're going to need to increase dosing. So the kidneys are something that they're very fragile and a lot of things affect them, but they're also very, very good at rebounding if we treat them correctly. So always pay attention to how your kidney function is doing and increase what you're doing to support them based on the symptoms that you're seeing. Now, I want to mention something that often comes up in relationship to kidneys. I've gotten a lot of questions recently about UTIs and or kidney infections. And the kind of root cause as to why these infections happen is often because you have poor kidney function. You have toxins that are sitting in the kidneys and they start to recirculate back into the blood and they sort of ferment. It's kind of like rotting garbage. It starts to be pretty disgusting after a while, right? But if we're flushing the kidneys and everything is leaving the body as it should, we're going to lower the chances of you getting either a UTI or a kidney infection dramatically. And the same nutrients that make the kidneys work support the urinary tract's ability to flush out all toxins. So if we can fix digestion, which we talked about in the first part of this series, our first 3 videos, if we can fix digestion and we can support kidney function, a lot of times we can get rid of those UTIs or kidney infections. And if you come to me and say, hey, I have a UTI or I have a kidney infection, I'm going to tell you to increase all the same nutrition that I would for a kidney issue. And I'll probably talk to you about adding some extra essential oils, some D-mannose, things like that, that help flush out that infection even faster. But even in that situation, I need the kidneys to be working correctly. Now, kidney stones actually do not fall into this discussion because what happens when you have a kidney stone is that your body is actually low in calcium. Now, you're thinking kidney stones are made of calcium, so why would it be a calcium lack? And the reason for that is when the bloodstream runs low in calcium, it starts pulling calcium from the bones to try and make up that deficit because it wants to keep your blood levels of calcium stable. And that's very important for your heart to function, your muscles to work, and for you to stay alive. So it's a very protective mechanism that the body does. But it senses it as an emergency and it pulls in so much calcium that there's really too much. And so then it starts to form stones in the kidneys where we get a lot of pain and blockages. And the solution that we actually need is to put more calcium into the body so that the blood stops getting really nervous and thinking there's an emergency, and it can stop pulling tons of calcium in from the bones. And when that calcium is increased, so it doesn't need to pull it from the bone, so there's enough available in the blood, we stop dealing with kidney stones. And if you want to know more about that, I'm going to include a video that goes over this hard tissue category and the support that we use to support healthy calcium levels and bones and joints in general. That'll be in the description if you're watching on YouTube, and show notes and resources if you're watching on Podbean. Okay, now let's talk about the things that damage the kidneys. So, of course, we know that the vitamins damage the kidneys if there's a vitamin deficiency, especially the B vitamins. And for this, we're going to use extra of the Sport and Go to make sure we're getting all the critical B vitamins. We've talked about that in prior episodes. But the next thing that causes significant kidney damage that most people don't realize is actually prescription medications. And there's 2 classes of drugs that are especially concerning. One is blood pressure drugs, and the other one is antibiotics. Now, if you actually pull out your medications and you look at their side effects and they say kidney damage on them, that's a problem. Because one of the things that's so critical when we're trying to have healthy circulation, healthy detox, is to have good kidney function, right? So this is why when it comes to blood pressure drugs, as much as possible, we want to do everything in our power to use nutritional strategies to maintain healthy blood pressure. And those are going to include the same things that we use to have healthy kidney function. Extra of your B vitamins, the GTM heirloom botanicals because of that circulation boost, that cardiovascular function increase. And we need things like the daily detox to make sure that we are flushing all those arteries throughout the body, whether it's in the cardiovascular system or in the kidneys. Now, if you have a significant blood pressure problem, there are times that you're going to have to use the drug so you can stay in the safe range. And then as you improve, we can slowly get off of those working with your doctor. So it is important to measure your blood pressure to know where you're at and to see what's happening. But as quickly as possible, if we can, I want to see us not using those drugs. Now, let's talk about antibiotics. Antibiotics, again, just like with blood pressure drugs, there is a time and a place. You know, if you have something like meningitis or a life-threatening infection, I am not going to tell you not to use them, especially if you're in the hospital, right? But what I do want you to be aware of is that one of the worst things antibiotics do is cause tremendous kidney damage. And in causing that kidney damage, they actually are blocking a main route of exit for the infection they're trying to kill. So what can happen here is you're killing off the infection, but it's not exiting the body. So there's now all this dead toxic waste that's not exiting. And I have seen this on multiple occasions. I actually have two personal friends of mine that may not be here today if we hadn't known about this situation with antibiotics and how to fix it. And this goes back to increasing your vitamin level, especially B2, because B2 will do two things in this situation. It will help the kidneys keep functioning, even with the antibiotics that are incoming that are causing damage. It will increase function and it will not kill an infection, but it will help flush out an infection. So whenever I have someone in the hospital on antibiotics, I'm very, very quick to have them take extra B2 to make sure that we keep flushing. This is absolutely critical. Now, if it's a more minor infection, I'd like to avoid antibiotics altogether because I don't want the damage that antibiotics cause to the gut and digestion. I don't want the damage that they cause to kidneys, right? So whenever I can, I'm going to use essential oils, and this is something we've done many episodes on using essential oils for various kinds of pathogens, various kinds of viruses, bacteria, etc. But just be aware that if you're falling into any of these categories, that knowing the strategies to increase kidney function is going to be super important to offset the side effects of these drugs. And there are other drugs that cause kidney damage. So if you're on any medications at all, read those side effects on your drugs. And if you see kidney damage or anything to do with the kidneys or like fluid retention or swelling, know that you're someone that's going to have to increase your nutrition because you're actively doing something to damage your kidneys. Now, hopefully, as you improve your diet, you improve your nutrition, we can work with your doctor and wean off all those drugs. But sometimes we have to do both simultaneously. Now, alcohol or drugs, and this of course wouldn't be prescription drugs, it would be things like heroin, fentanyl, etc. A lot of times when we have these addictions, it actually goes back to a nutritional deficiency that's causing the body to look for something that it's missing. And a lot of times you see addictions develop after someone has been through a period of extreme stress or some kind of major emotional event. And in those types of settings, not only do we have a lot to cope with mentally and emotionally, but we also burn through our B vitamins and all of our other nutrition that is needed to manage our health and our mental and emotional health, right? So when I see an addiction, one of the first things I like to do is have people use extra sport and go. So they're getting extra of the B vitamins, extra of the adaptogenic herbs, extra minerals, as well as the daily detox and the GTM heirloom botanicals so that I'm supporting their body's need to manage both the mental side of health, the emotional side of health, and the physical side of health as much as possible. And if you increase that dosing when you're trying to break a drug or alcohol addiction, it becomes much, much easier than if you're trying to break those addictions without adding that extra nutritional support. So we've used this slide before. And I want to read this quote from Dr. Mark Hyman. He says, "What you find at the end of your fork is more powerful than anything you'll find at the bottom of a pill bottle." That is so true. All the work you do to improve digestion, detox your kidneys, you take your high impact supplements, all of that's going to have little success if you are continuing to put toxins or inflammation causing foods into your body every time you eat. This is a really, really huge deal that I think a lot of people overlook. So let's talk about inflammation causing foods. So anything that triggers inflammation, whether it's GMO food, whether it's pesticides, chemicals of any kind, or even high sugar in your diet, all of these are going to create free radicals in the body that lead to inflammation. How do we fix that? This is where we clean up the diet. We use a ketogenic type lifestyle, fasting. And even if you don't like the idea of keto because you feel like it's going to be restrictive, or you're like, I don't need to lose weight, understand that you can also call keto the anti-inflammatory diet, because that is truly, at the end of the day, what it is. And the interesting thing, the reason I talk so much about the ketogenic diet is once you understand the principles and what foods are used on the ketogenic diet, you will start to realize they're going to be low sugar, they're going to be low toxin. So that's probably in many ways one of the biggest benefits of the ketogenic diet, is that we get rid of the GMO foods, most of the pesticides, most of the chemicals. So it's a really easy way to start getting rid of a lot of this stuff we shouldn't even consider food in the first place, a lot of the processed toxic foods. We can also use things like the daily detox tea to flush out those toxins so we can lower inflammation. And of course, the GTM, which has the antioxidants in things like the ginger, the turmeric, and the muscadine. So we can, by doing this basic nutritional strategy that also supports kidney health, we can help the entire body, and a ketogenic and fasting lifestyle will actually have a strong impact on keeping the kidneys from getting redamaged. What else damages the kidneys? So oxidized or hydrogenated fats or oils. So this is going to be things like margarine, hydrogenated lard. If you have a natural non-hydrogenated lard, that's a very healthy food. But if it says hydrogenated, you should throw it away. All of your vegetable oils are, again, not only are most of them GMO, they're loaded with chemicals, they're also oxidized and highly, highly toxic. Most olive oil falls into this category too. And that is because the way olive oil is processed and then how old it is, by the time it gets to most of us, it has typically gone bad. So olive oil that's fresh has a lot of health benefits, but unfortunately, unless you source a few select brands or you have the opportunity to make it yourself out of olives, a lot of times it's gone bad, and it's just something I avoid. Mayonnaise is another source of all kinds of free radicals, and so are most salad dressings. So how do we fix this? We want to use natural fats that are not oxidized, that do not have all these chemicals in them, and they're not GMO. So the natural fats also will have high smoke points. So we're looking for things like grass-fed butter, ghee, duck fat, tallow, coconut oil, non-hydrogenated lard. These are the best fats for cooking. They can handle heat the best. You still don't really want to burn any type of oil or fat if you can help it, because when they start to burn, that's when you start to run into more toxins. So while I know that crispy, crunchy burn taste can be delicious, just understand we're veering over into several kinds of toxins potentially there that can be highly carcinogenic. So not a big fan of that. Let's talk about eggs. You want to do your eggs over easy, soft scrambled, soft boiled. You don't want to let the yolks turn green, because when you overcook the eggs, and again, you're burning the butter, we're dealing with those oxidized, toxic, and degraded fats and cholesterol, which can actually become really dangerous in the body and not helpful. So just use that low, slow heat. And I like to actually add the butter in a little closer to the end of cooking so that it melts and I have a really buttery egg, but it's not burned. You don't want to heat oils like grapeseed or avocado oils. They're fine to add in toward the end where they don't get really hot, or you can use them like in salad dressings, or if you're making your own mayonnaise, those can be really good uses for those oils. Okay, now let's talk about nitrates and nitrites. Now, these directly damage the kidneys and they damage them very, very badly. This is a must not do if you have kidney problems of any type, really. And nitrates and nitrites are in some of our favorite foods. So processed meats, bacon, sausage, deli ham, smoked meats, and these are some really delicious foods, right? So, but when they have the chemical nitrite and nitrates in them, these are actually considered class 1 carcinogens according to the World Health Organization. That means they directly cause cancer and kidney damage. They damage the arteries. They scar and nick the arteries and cause a lot of problems. There is no safe level. If you research this, everyone's in agreement on this. They're just not safe. So rather than cutting out all these delicious foods, there's a very simple solution. Just purchase uncured nitrate-free products. You can still enjoy your sausage and bacon. I'm not telling you to give them up. You can still enjoy your ham, right? Just get the uncured nitrate-free products. I think you're going to be amazed how much better they actually taste. They can be cured with celery juice. That's not a chemical curing process. Just read your labels. Fried foods. I know. They're one of our favorite foods sometimes, right? But when we fry, we use that really high heat. Frying and chemically processing creates our acrylamides and nitrosamines in foods. Again, there is no safe level. Our acrylamides and nitrosamines are another toxin that happens when food is overheated. It is again directly carcinogenic, meaning cancer causing. So the solution here is no fried fast foods, period. They're just not safe. You want to bake your fries if you're doing French fries, right? You don't want to fry them. So when we eat these foods that have been fried in these oils that are GMO, that are oxidized to begin with, and now we heat them to very high temperatures that you have to do when you're frying foods, we're now adding to something that was already super toxic. We're adding the acrylamide and nitrosamine factor, which is only introduced when the food is fried. So this is a huge problem. This is why there is no fried food that is ever going to be safe, especially if it's fast food. Because in fast food restaurants, they fry your French fries over and over in the same oil, and every time it's heated, it becomes more toxic. You have the same thing when you're reusing oil and frying things at home. Every time you use it, it becomes more and more and more toxic, and we add more types of toxins. So just skip it. You want to bake fries instead if you're doing French fries, and you want to prepare all your food with baking, steaming, and stewing cooking methods. All of these things not only reduce your toxin intake, but it also is going to be easier for you to digest, actually. So you're helping both your kidneys, your digestion, and lowering your exposure to toxins. So some of these things that we've gotten used to thinking as food, we really should not think of them as food because they are simply not safe for the body. And as I like to say, nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. So make your choices wisely when you're choosing what you want to eat, and look for alternative ways to prepare your food. I get asked a lot about air fryers. And while we don't use oil in an air fryer, and there's a certain level of chemicals that's been removed because of not using the oil, I think the jury is a little bit out, because there's also been some research that says the air fryers themselves release chemicals when they're heated to that high of a level. So that's something I'm not a huge fan of, just because it's a little bit of an unknown at this point. So I think it's a safer option for sure, but I would still limit how often I was doing it. Okay, so let's talk about some more diet mistakes that we make that damage the kidneys. That's when we eat high carb, low protein diets. So high carb diets are going to damage the kidneys through inflammation. They're going to have to flush a lot of sugar. We're going to increase our chances of proteinuria, diabetes, dehydration, high blood pressure, and more. So no good thing happens in a high carb, low protein diet. The kidneys are actually made of protein structurally. So when you have proteinuria, it's very similar to what happens with the kidney stones, where we're pulling so much calcium in that we're actually have too much and it's creating kidney stones. The same thing is happening in proteinuria when there's actually protein in, they're showing up in the urine in the kidneys. The body's running out, so it's pulling it and it's pulling too much, and we actually stop that by increasing the amount of healthy protein so that the body can now regulate correctly and we don't have protein in all the wrong places. So when we increase protein, high quality protein, we're actually going to help with all of these conditions. And again, we're going to help rebuild the kidneys. So we're looking for a high fat, an anti-inflammatory diet, and we're looking for moderate to even high protein diets to help rebuild the kidneys. And this again is where we turn to a ketogenic lifestyle because it's high fat, it's anti-inflammatory, and we can also make a ketogenic diet be higher in protein if we need to. Or some people will even turn to a carnivore diet as a temporary way to really increase that protein. And carnivore is also highly anti-inflammatory to function as a temporary rebuilding mechanism. Carnivores are hard to maintain long term because it doesn't involve fruits, any vegetables. It doesn't involve some of the things that we really like desserts. And that's why for a long-term strategy, I really prefer keto over carnivore, but carnivore can be kind of a crash diet situation if you need to reverse something really quickly. Fasting also is going to help the body rebuild, get rid of a lot of the toxins and a lot of the carbs. So these are some of the things that we can do diet-wise to make a big difference in our kidney health. And if you're not familiar with the ketogenic lifestyle, I'm going to encourage you to go to the 4 Weeks to Keto playlist that we have on our YouTube channel. It's also on Podbean. There's actually 10 step-by-step videos. There's a couple that will take you through breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacking, eating out, all of the things kind of step-by-step if you're brand new. There's videos that talk about our amazing Vital Shake that can function as a meal replacement. There's some videos on mindset and adjusting whatever diet you choose to follow to kind of meet your personal situation. Love that one as well. So there's a lot of coaching that goes way beyond what we talked about today with diet. And it's going to also reiterate some of the reasons why we want to get rid of some of these toxic foods. So if you want more information, check out that playlist. It'll be linked in the show notes and resources if you're on Podbean, and the description if you're on YouTube. And that brings us to the end of our series on kidneys. Videos 5, 6, and 7 again of this series have been on the kidneys. And our next video, video number 8, in our 10-part video series, will start a conversation about detoxing the liver and gallbladder. And here are all of our social links. You can see my YouTube channel, the Podbean link, and I want to encourage you, if you're not already part of our Top Shelf Nutra family, make sure you check it out. Go ahead and join us where you can get high quality nutrition at wholesale prices and free shipping. And if you're not already part of our Top Shelf Nutra Telegram channel, you'll want to join that so that you can ask questions. You can be up to date on all the things going on at Top Shelf. You can get all the recordings, including today's recordings. And ancestral supplements is something that we talk about a lot on this podcast because of their amazing products. You can use the code CarolLee10 for 10% off all your orders, and my personal website, which is wellnesssprings.inc.com. And you can also find on wellnesssprings.inc.com, where you can type in ketomadeeasy.com, and it will go there too, and get some great keto information and keto recipes. That brings us to the end of today. I hope you learned something new, and we will see you again. Thank you so much for listening.